Wanderer of the Wasteland, Chapter 20, Part 5. A gaunt man, raw-boned and dark, with a face like a ghoul, stood just outside the circle described by the long bar. He held a mesquite branch with forked and thorny end, which he used as a goad. Whenever the hairy, half-naked giant passed around, this gaunt man would swing the whip. It cracked on the brown back, spattered the drops of blood. There were 3 other men shoveling, carrying, and dumping ore into the pit. One was slight of build and hard of face. A red, undershirted fellow looked tough and wiry. Of middle-aged, a seasoned desert rat, villainous as a reptile. The 3rd man had a small, closely cropped head, like a bullet, and a jaw that stood out beyond his brow, a hard visage, smeared with sweat and dust. His big naked shoulders proclaimed him young. And the grizzled giant whom the others were goading and working to death there in the terrible heat was Adam's old savior and friend Mukes. Cautiously Adam backed and slid down the clay slope and hurried up and down another. When he had crossed several, he turned to the left and ran down to the trail and followed along that until he reached the spot where he had left the buckets of water. There he drank deeply and tried to restrain his hurry, but he was not tired or out of breath, and his mind seemed a deadlock. A weapon, a shovel, a sledge to crush their skulls, to keep between them and their guns. Thus Adam's thoughts had riveted themselves on a few actions. There was on the surface of his body a cold, hard, tingling stretch of skin over rippling muscles, and deep internally the mysterious and manifold life of blood and nerve and bone awoke and flamed under the instinct of ages. Adam's body then belonged to the past and what the desert had made it. Swinging the crossbar over his shoulders and lifting the buckets, he took the trail down toward the camp. He bowed his head and his shoulders more than the weight of the buckets made necessary. The perverse gale blew more fiercely than ever, and the hollow roar resounded louder, and the yellow gloom of dust descended closer, and a weird dim light streamed through the pall, down upon the moving shadows. All was somber, naked, earthy in this thickening, lowering pall. Odor of smoke and dust. A fiercely burning heat that had the weight of hotly pressing lead. Bellow and shriek and moan of gale that died away. It was the portal to an inferno, and Adam was a man descended in age-long successions from simian beasts. And he strode in the image of God with love, his motive, rage, his passion, and the wild years of the desert at his back, driving him on. He rounded the last corner. There was the camp 50 yards away. He now could almost straddle the only avenue of escape. The wind lulled. A yellow shadow drifted away from the sun, and again it shone with sinister magenta hue. All the air seemed to wait, as if the appalling forces of nature, aghast at the strange lives of men, had halted to watch. "Thar's Bill with the water," yelled the red-shirted man. Work in action ceased. The giant Mukes looked, then heaved erect with head poised like that of a hawk. "Oh, Bill, you son of a gun," called another robber in welcome. "We damn near died waiting for that water." "Ho, ho, Bill, you must have run agin another Indian." Adam walked on, shortening himself a little the more, quickening his stride. When he reached and passed the shelter under which lay packs and coats and guns, he suddenly quivered as if released from dragging restraint. The robber of slight frame and hard face had walked out from under the shelter. He alone had been silent. He'd peered keenly, bending a little. "Hey, is that you, Bill?" he queried with hard voice which suited his face. The gaunt robber cracked his whip. "Fellers, air We locoed by this here dust. Damn the deceiving light, too big for Bill, or I'm blind with heat. It ain't Bill, screeched the little man, and he bounded toward where lay the guns. Adam dropped the buckets down. They thudded with a splash. Two of his great leaps intercepted the little man, who veered aside, dodged, and then tried to run by. Adam, with a lunge and a swing, hit him squarely on the side of the head. The blow rang soddenly. Its tremendous power propelled the man off his feet, turning him sideways as he went through the air, and carried him with terrific force against one of the shelter posts around which his limp body seemed to wrap itself. Crash! The post gave way, letting the roof sag. Then the smitten man rolled to lodge against a pack and lay inert. Whirling swiftly, Adam drew his gun and paused a second, ready to rush. The robbers stood stock still. "My God!" hoarsely yelled the red-shirted one. "Who's that? Did you see him soak Robbins?" Dismukes let out a stentorian roar of joy, of hate, of triumph. Like a chained elephant, he plunged to escape. Failing that, he surged down to yell, "Aha, you bloody claim jumpers. Now you're done. It's Wansfell." "Wansfell!" flashed the gaunt-faced villain, and that gaunt face turned ashen. "Grab a shovel, run for a gun." Then the red-shirted robber swung aloft his shovel and rushed it at him, bawling fierce curses. Adam shot him through. The man seemed blocked as if by heavy impact. Then more fiercely he rushed again. Adam's second and last shot, fired at point blank, staggered him. But the shovel descended on Adam's head, a hard blow, fortunately from the flat side. Clubbing his gun, Adam beat down the man, who went falling with his shovel under the shelter. Both of the other men charged at him, and the three met at the opening. They leaped so swiftly upon him and were so heavy-bodied that they bore him to the ground. Adam's grim intention was to hang on to both of them so neither could run to get a weapon. To that end, he locked a hold on each, then began a whirling, wrestling, thudding battle. To make sure of them, Adam had handicapped himself. He could not swing his mallet-like fists, and he had not been fortunate enough to grip their throats. So rolling over and over with them, he took the rain of blows, swinging them back, heaving his weight upon them. Foot by foot, he won his way farther and farther from where the guns lay. If one yelling robber surged half erect, Adam swung the other to trip him. And once inside the wide doorway of that octagon structure, Adam rose with the struggling men, an iron hand clutching each, and swinging them wide apart by a giant effort, he brought them back into solid and staggering impact. He had hoped to bring their heads together, but only their bodies collided, and the force of collision broke Adam's hold on one. The young man of hulking frame went down, right on the shovel, and quick to grasp it, he bounded up fierce and strong, but as he swung aloft the weapon, Adam let go of the gaunt-faced man and hit him, knocking him against the other. They staggered back, almost fallen. Swift on that advantage, Adam swung a fist to the bulging jaw of the man with the shovel. As if struck by a catapult, he went down over the wooden beam, and then shovel flew far. Then Adam blocked the doorway. The other fellow charged him, only to be knocked back. As he reeled, his comrade, panting loud, straddled the long beam. Just then Dismukes, with quick wits, heaved forward on the beam to which he was bound, and the claim jumper went sprawling in the dirt. Dismukes celebrated this entrance into the fray with another stentorian yell. Adam awoke now to a different and more intense sense of the fight. He had his antagonist cornered. They could never get by him to secure a gun. And the fierce zest of violent strife, the ruthless law of the desert, the survival of the strongest, the bloodlust, would have made him refuse any weapon save his hands. He stood on his feet, and his hands were enough. Like a wolf, he snapped his teeth, then locked his jaw. As he swung and battled and threw these foes backward, a strange wild joy accelerated his actions. When he struck, The sodden blow felt good. He avoided no return blows. He breasted them. The smell of sweat and blood and the heat of panting breaths in his face, the feel of hot rippling muscle all tended to make him the fiercer. His sight stayed keen, though tinged with red. He saw the beady, evil eyes of the big robber like hot green fire, and the bruised and bleeding face with its snarling mouth, and as he saw it, he struck out hard with a savage thrill. He saw the gaunt and sallow visage of the other, bloody mouth with malignant gaze of frenzied hate, of glinting intent to kill, and as he saw, he beat him down. Then into his pulsing sense burst a terrible yell from Dismukes. The gaunt-faced man had fallen into the pit of the Arastra, and Dismukes had suddenly started ahead, shoving the beam over him. The big rocks, dragging by chains from the cross-beam, began to pound around on the oar. Jar and rumble, then a piercing scream issued from the man who had been caught under the rocks, who was being dragged around the Arastra. Adam saw, even as he knocked back another rush of the other men. "Grinding gold, Wansfell," roared Dismukes. "More ore, pard. We're grinding gold." The huge prospector bent to his task. Supreme was his tremendous effort. Strength of 10 men, and blood gushed from the cuts on his brawny back. Faster he shoved until he was running, and as he came around, the ferocity of his bristling face and the swelling of the great chest with its mats of hair seemed to prove him half man, half beast, a gorilla in a death grapple. Again the big robber lunged up to lower his head and charge at Adam. He was past yelling. He did not seek to escape. He would have given his life to kill. "More ore, Wansfell," yelled Dismukes as with whistling breath he shoved around the terrible mill of rumbling rocks. A horrible, long-drawn cry issued from under them. Then the sweep of the long beam caught the man who was charging. Adam, down to his knees it forced him, and catching under his chin, was dragging him when the upright post gave way with a crash. The released beam under the tremendous momentum of Dismuke's massive weight and strength seemed to flash across the half circle, lifting and carrying the man. A low wall of rock caught his body, and the beam, swinging free from its fastenings, cracked his head as if it had been a ripe melon. End of chapter 20.